Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Expel podcast here at NADA. I'm Steve Janice. I'm joined by CEO of Expel, Ryan Pape, and the VP of Revenue, Tony Rimas. And I don't know, guys, I think we're going to have a little fun here.
Yeah, we will. Thank you, Steve.
Exactly.
Excited.
So, Ryan, I'm going to start with you because Expel, as far as I know it, started more as an aftermarket product or working with your independent dealers and retailers, and has grown and expanded into the dealership space. We're obviously at NADA for the automotive dealerships. But can you take us back a little bit down memory lane? How did that happen?
Sure. Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I mean, we started in the aftermarket, and it was your prototypical enthusiast who would learn about our products, buy a car, take their car into the aftermarket, and put film on their car, and did it usually over and over and many times. And I think then what you would expect, and I think everyone in this building would not be surprised, is enterprising car dealers looked at that and said, "Oh, you buy a lot of cars from me, and you do the same thing to all of them. What is that?"
Mm-hmm.
And that really then starts a cycle of dealership interest and adoption into the product. And they're doing it in response to the trend and seeing what their customers do. And so the aftermarket it still is the largest part of our business, but it really dominated our revenue for a long time. But then slowly but surely you started to see dealership involvement in the space just begin and then start a slow climb up over time. So I mean the first roots of the dealerships involved in this product, they go way back. I mean, you're probably 15 years ago or something like that at a very small scale.
And I assume there's a couple different models, and this may be good for your independent dealers, retailers, installers to work with those dealerships in some cases.
No, for sure. I mean, if you look at every channel of our business, which was aftermarket, when there was really no dealership business, now a very healthy dealership business. You see some of the manufacturers involved now, but every part in every channel is multiples and multiples of the size it ever was. So, the biggest challenge we have with our products is really just awareness. People don't know about them, and so dealerships are incredible for creating awareness. They have the new car buyer present, and they are excellent at selling. When they want to. So you've seen the aftermarket continue to grow even with the dealership involvement, but in many cases because of dealership involvement. Just because the dealership is selling the product doesn't mean the aftermarket's not necessarily involved in installing it and servicing it. There's a role for everybody in there, and that's led to the growth of every one of those channels.
Got it. Rising tide
Lifts all boats,
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, so it sounds like. So Tony, you've been with Expel 2 years?
2.5 years.
2.5 years.
Yeah.
So you were a dealer. You owned dealerships before, correct?
Correct.
And maybe tell us a little bit about your background. But then, how did you find your way to Expel?
That was a long path, but I had met Ryan, I think, maybe 10, 12 years ago through some other happenstance. But at the end of the day, at our dealerships, we were very, very focused on F&I income, basically the back-end gross profit, as we call it. And if you know anything about the San Antonio market, it is very well dominated by 4 or 5 families. Very, very competitive. Therefore, front-end gross is always challenged. Unless you were actually adding value-added products to the vehicle before you were selling it, that's the only way you could really defend yourself on the front-end side. But on the back end, I'm dating myself here, but I remember when we had LoJack to sell, and that was actually a tangible add to the vehicle, and you obviously had assurance packages around that and everything else you could sell. And there was one ad that we actually had profits embedded in the back end that were non-cancelable, and they actually stayed with the vehicle through its life.
Mm-hmm.
And when I circled back with Ryan, I guess in 2022, and was looking for what's next, believe it or not, I was thinking about, okay, do I go back in and try to become a minority partner in a dealership group, or is there something for me here at Expel? Because I always admired Ryan, his leadership, and the culture he had built. No idea how it had grown from this little place on Sunset in San Antonio. I think it was like 3,000 square feet to now it's quite a great business. At the end of the day, I see what all these other dealers in here see is truly what I think is really a tangible asset that customers should be adding to their very prized assets. And as we mentioned in some other podcasts, the vehicles prices continue to grow.
Yeah.
Therefore, customers are thinking about this this is a major investment for me. I'm going to keep it longer than I've ever kept a vehicle. So why not protect it along the way?
Yep.
So our attachment rate is growing, I think, with the cost of the vehicle today.
Yeah. Does that resonate? Is it his story? Can you corroborate that story,
No,
Ryan?
that's exactly right, and I think all of those trends are real, and that's been something we've been focused on, and I think a mission for us is we want to grow attach rates, and I think the fact that our product, relatively speaking, our shareholders might not like it, but our product's actually cheaper today than it was 5 years ago, just relative to the cost to have our services done into the average new cost of the vehicle. So it makes even more sense now than it did, but all of that is as a means to drive attachment and awareness.
So there was a recent study that showed that dealership employees, sort of sales managers and above, were polled and felt that adding PPF definitely adds to the resale value or helps protect the resale value of the car. So in this one study, it cited up to 70% of those folks felt that it would add up to 15% more value to the resale of the car. We can debate the numbers, but
Sure.
it's a good thing, right? Like protecting your investment and protecting your car as we see price increases rise is probably a good thing. And that didn't need to be a full car, at least in the study. It could have been a front only. And I imagine in the dealership space, that's what you see more. I might be wrong, but it's not necessarily a full car protection. It might be a front or parts of it. Can you speak to that, Ryan?
Yeah, no, I mean you see all of it, and that's the beauty of the product is you can scale it to meet every price point and every customer. Yeah, the study is great. You kind of snicker about it a little bit because it really showed what everybody knows. I mean that the product works. It's a demonstrable, real thing. It does what it says, and that's why you've seen the aftermarket be so strong, and why you see customers who buy the product over and over and over again because they know that. And the dealers know it from their experience selling it, but many of them know it from their personal experience because for many dealers, their first experience with the product was on their own cars, even before it was integrated in their dealership. So it's great to see that validated, and I think it probably surprises no one who's ever been close to the product.
Yeah, absolutely. Tony, have you found, would you want to comment on that? Do you see anything there about resale value?
I agree with everything Ryan's saying. I think there's an opportunity here for markets that are selling a lot of lease penetration, and they know that vehicle is going to come back to them to possibly buy that vehicle or possibly auction it off. Hopefully, it will protect some residual value. But then, furthermore, this could be a great product for rental car fleets. Obviously, rental cars are very highly used, and I think they're used a little bit differently than your sought after car on weekend. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity for those categories that have normally just stayed away from any ads, and I think that the ads could even extend to fleets beyond even rental cars.
Ryan, what would you say are your challenges then in the dealership space as you've continued to grow that piece of the business?
Well, I would go back to awareness. I mean, we have people in this building today that never seen this product, never seen the brand, and so that's obviously important. This is a professionally installed product, so you need labor to install it, and so you've got plenty of options on how to do that. There are dealers that know that and want to internalize that and do a great job. There are dealers that want to lean on our huge network of aftermarket to provide that on a sublet basis, and that's obviously a big benefit to our customers that want to do that. But it is professionally installed, right? So you need that capability, and I think we're competing for shelf space in the dealership with a lot of other things, and I don't think it's hard to prove that this is a better product than a lot of those. Certainly in the realm of profitability and definitely from the standpoint of what a consumer thinks of it and the consumer acceptance of it. But you've still got to go through that process. Right. It's not always self-evident. That doesn't happen overnight. So we're in a constant awareness mode, not just from trying to get consumers to know what the product is, but also that this is a good fit for all dealers, sort of irrespective of how you want to get it on the car.
Yeah. Tony, have you had any personal experiences there trying to convince a dealer to take on Expel?
Not recently. I wouldn't say to Ryan's point, I wouldn't say it's a lay down sale. You obviously need to educate them on the value. They're under tremendous price pressure as inventories come back. So they're competitive. Like when you add this stuff to vehicles, it does add slight cost. You have to disclose that. If you're a well-behaved dealer, you need to disclose that on your website and so on and so forth. But if you're actually disclosing what it is and what it protects, it should be a value add in the consumer's eyes and hopefully help the turn rate of those vehicles.
Yeah, yeah. And hopefully you're able to show them it's a way for them to make some extra money.
Absolutely.
Drive some revenue. So Ryan, let's pivot. We've had some partners on here. We had Gardax on from the UK. We've had WD Co Auto on from Canada. I know you operate around the globe. So do you see the challenges in other markets at dealership level? Are they different than here in the States, or are they pretty similar?
I would say it's definitely some of both. I mean, if you look at some of the core challenges, things like awareness, you're still fighting that everywhere. If you look at the operating models of dealerships around the world, I mean, you find similarities, and then you find places where things work quite a bit differently, and agency models and dealerships that don't carry inventory versus lots of inventory on the ground here in the U.S. So those are all differences. So I think the go-to-market's different. The sort of terminal attach rate through that channel that we can achieve is probably different in the different markets. But the reason the customer wants the product and the reason that the dealer could sell the product, it's the same everywhere. And we have that in common. How we do it, the exact details change. China is not the same as the U.S., is not the same as the U.K. But what we found is that really every market is following the U.S. in terms of adoption. I mean, it's really what happens here that's emulated elsewhere, and we see that in the dealer space globally, but we saw it in the aftermarket too. I mean, the aftermarket development in every country sort of follows what the U.S. did. So, we're not trying to run the exact same playbook that we have here. We're trying to take lessons from it, and then our team around the world sort of adapt that to the local market. But the opportunity exists everywhere. I mean, there's no market of the world where you say, this is not a fit for dealers in this market. Maybe a little bit different, but it's really universally applicable.
Yeah. And do you have a vision to go direct in a lot of these markets? Because I think last year in China, you ended up purchasing the distributor there.
For
Is that
sure. I
correct?
mean, I think when you're trying to do something like we're doing here with dealers, which is really, raise awareness, be a valued service to any dealer here in any way they need it. If they need product, we're here for product. But if they need service, we're going to connect them to our aftermarket network or provide them service in some other way. The dealers need that kind of attention everywhere. And so the more layers we put between us and the dealer in these other markets, it's just hard to do that. It's a high touch, high service model. So we've got to be there to help do that. And nobody else is doing it like we are. So if we're not doing it, it's not going to happen. So we're direct really in 20 of the top 25 car markets of the world, plus or minus. That's been a huge goal of ours. We've largely accomplished that in terms of our presence. And now you have to scale, all of those markets. Even to be even a fraction of what the U.S. is, while the U.S. is growing, is a great outcome. So that's really in many markets the dealer adoption is in the first inning or no more.
Yeah, gotcha. That's exciting, actually. Yeah,
No, it's fun.
A lot of upside there. Tony, what excites you? What's next for Expel for you
Well,
that you can talk about?
I mean, I think Ryan hit on it earlier. I mean, attach rate is truly paramount for us. Like we absolutely need to stay laser focused on that. I think when I first got here, I'll be honest, I probably sent us down a couple of rabbit, holes, and we were exploring a lot of things. And what we've realized is our attach rate we have so much more wood to chop there.
Okay.
And I think you mentioned it earlier, a couple of our partners. You'll notice in some of our geographies, we are direct, but we are not adverse to partnerships that can help us go faster. I mean, some of those names that you mentioned, they had been embedded for decades.
Yep.
And if we continue to find, those best-in-class partners and we can continue to accelerate our penetration and attach rate, we're going to do it.
Yeah. Is it as simple to say, when you say attach rate, I just want to make sure people understand that, that there's such an opportunity for the mass market brands? Because if you drive a Porsche or Bentley, probably no Expel, but maybe not if you drive a Chevy. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that, but I think also you think of attach rate, there's a number of products we have, packages that you can attach to a vehicle.
Okay.
You can start small, like Ryan was describing. We could just do a wear and tear package, and we could actually protect your nav screen from, smudges and glare and all of that. That's starting small.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, we want to make sure we have a package for each and every VIN on the road.
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons we're so focused on that attach rate is we know from the aftermarket and we know from the dealers that no matter where you start, you're always going to grow the content over time. It's universal. The coverage in the aftermarket for paint protection film used to be, part of the hood.
Right.
That's unheard of today. And so we know that wherever it starts, it'll grow. And even dealers that we're in at, like Tony's saying, really small coverage, something at a price point that they perceive as sort of the no-brainer. Time and time again, we see that grow over time as they're more comfortable with it. So, the content growth will happen. That's not a question. So if you get the attachment, the content growth happens. So it's, why we're so focused on that is just the primary driver for us.
Nice, nice. So you may have just answered it, but what's next and what excites you, Ryan?
Well, I think you come to events like this, and I always love when I meet people that know our brand and know our product, and then you meet people that don't know our brand and don't know our product,
Yeah.
and you kind of want to yell at the marketing team because they don't know, but then you're kind of happy they don't know. So just a typical CEO, you're never happy about anything. But I think we've got to just continue to dig in and dial in what we're doing. Continue to get more and more sophisticated about how we do it. You come to a show like NADA and you're reminded about how much technology there is in the dealership space and how important that is to driving results. And I think there's elements of our business and the broader channel we're in, dealers and otherwise, where we can bring more of that to bear to just make everybody better, to drive that attachment and ultimately drive that content. And then we've had as a business, close to 50% of our revenue outside the U.S. for a long time, and we know those markets are just ripe for development. And so making sure we're staying laser focused on that. And Tony touched on it. You have an impulse as a business to always do more things and add more things, add more products, add more services, do this, and there's certainly a role for that for us. But you also need to be really focused on what your primary mission is and what's right at your core, and make sure you're delivering on that. So I think a lot more of that to come for us.
Yeah, a lot of focus, more marketing, I heard.
Yeah, always, always marketing.
That sounds good. Tony, what else are you looking forward to if you were able to walk around this hall for a half hour? What are you hoping to see?
I think I mentioned it earlier with the partners. We're so focused on the awareness of our product and getting it into the dealers' hands that don't know it exists, or they've been selling a lot of daily drivers that they may not think it's relevant for.
Yeah.
We're not going to be able to get that message syndicated, directly to each and every dealer. So there are partners in this room that we'll visit with to accelerate that path.
Yep.
Well
Same
said.
for you, Ryan?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think the benefit of shows like this or anything is, you just realize the space we're in, just how enormous it is.
Yeah.
And it's easy to sort of, I think, when you sit behind a computer, you sit in your own little world, you sort of, forget about that. And then, you look at companies here that are incredibly successful at what they're doing, and they're serving but a fraction of the installed dealer base in the country, right?
Yeah.
So, just big opportunity, and it's good to stay grounded in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both for being here. This was fun, at least for me. I learned some things too, which is always nice. And have a great show.
That's great. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, thank you.